Hi, guys. This is Mark Morris, the copy bull writer from 8 Seconds Rule. And I just want to start off by telling you about Anchor. Anchor.fm. I found this site a couple of years ago, and it is the simplest and easiest way to start a podcast that I know of today. You can do it straight from your smartphone. You don't need anything but their app. It's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast. You can even add music, add buffers, all of those things right here on the site. It doesn't cost anything to host it. You can start as many as you want. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it's heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, many more, and you make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. If you've thought about having a podcast, but you think that you just can't do it, you've come to the right place, because I am going to burst all your bubbles today. You can do this. This is part 2 of how I make this podcast. No punches pulled on the 8-second rule. This is 8-second rule, the podcast about attention-based marketing where we talk about getting, holding on to, and developing the attention of your ideal audience. You've got 8 seconds. What are you going to do with it? All right, guys, so I shared with you kind of where I started in the episode right before this, which is episode 19. If you have not heard it, you need to go back and you need to listen to that because it is important. Hi, I am Mark R. Morris Jr. I'm the host of 8-Second Rule. I am the bull writer of copywriting. If you don't know what that means, find me on LinkedIn and please connect. Read my About section. You'll understand it all. It's about cowboys and how they have to stay on a bull for 8 seconds in order to score. It's also about basketball and how you have 8 seconds to get the ball from underneath your basket after your opponent has scored, past the half-court line, or turn the ball over. This is a similar concept to what happens in marketing when someone shows up on your work. If they're looking at your social media posts, your podcasts, your blog, whatever you've got going on, and especially advertising, you have to hook them in early and hook them in hard. So we're going to talk all about the tools that are available and the techniques that you can use to not just build an audience, but grow it. Okay, that's what we're here for. So today I'm going to be talking specifically about how I make this podcast. That last episode, if you're curious, I put it in the show notes, but if you're curious, it took me less than 40 minutes to record it, to edit it, and to upload it. It was available to the world in less than an hour. How do I do it? Here's where the magic starts. I'll talk all about it in the next segment. All right, guys. So remember, I have been crawling around in stories since I was very young. I started out in theater, so I know this stuff inside and out of how to kind of talk to an audience a little bit. I may not be the most polished guy in the world, but I get the job done. So ideas. Let's start there. I have a ton of ideas already in my LinkedIn articles and in my LinkedIn posts and just floating around inside my head and also in my blog and in my books. So that part is not difficult for me because I've been sharing on this topic of content marketing and authority marketing and attention-based marketing for over a decade. Okay, so if you think, oh my gosh, where do you come up with all this content? Well, I didn't do it in the last 2 weeks. Jeez. No, I've been thinking about this for a long time, guys. And so this bits and pieces from all over the place, all right? It's kind of like that cook who always has the ingredients in their kitchen to make a marvelous gourmet meal. That's me with stupid content ideas for the internet. I am the gourmet of content marketing. Maybe. I make a really mean peanut butter and jelly sandwich. All right, so that's it. There's no big secrets there. You ask a question. Go back and listen to Jessica Walrach on how she comes up with ideas. She had some really great tips in there, guys. Listen, I'm not the only person out there who teaches this stuff. If you really want to learn it, Google it. Go back and listen to the Go Down the Rabbit Hole episode because I will tell you why you need to be doing those things. That's where ideas come from. You have to work. You can't just sit in your chair and think them up. They don't come from there. Real writers, if you listen to guys like John Steinbeck and just novelists who've done amazing work, why? Because they had amazing life experiences. Okay, yes, you can get some of that from research. Yes, you can use your imagination, but it's going to take a lot more work. Okay, get out, talk to people, do something, even if it's online, because right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. So please, if you're going out, for God's sake, wear a mask. Okay, that's my PSA right there. The ideas are already here for me, and they're there for you too if you just go and find them and put them into your own thoughts and let them come out the other side. It's like a sausage machine, guys. And learning to talk like this did not come overnight either. It took me 25 years of being on stage in front of complete strangers and making a total fool of myself. So if I screw up, I have no skin in the game. It's not a big deal. I've done it before. I've done it in front of much larger audiences that were paying me to be there. So it's no big thing. I've been there, done that, survived it, got the t-shirt, probably several of them. But when I come to an idea, there's two different ways that I'll approach it. I will either have just a few simple show notes, which I usually put into Google Docs so I can read those either off of my phone or off of my computer screen, because sometimes I'm recording on my phone. And I will follow that loosely. I learned to do this from my father, who was a minister. God rest his soul. He told me that when you write a sermon, you come in, you tell people what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So that's going to be my basic formula in just about every kind of content that I ever produce, guys. That's how it works. You have to prep the mind, fill the mind, then you got to go back and remind the mind of what you just said. Because if you don't do at least those three things, if you don't touch it at least 3 times, no one's going to remember it. It won't impact them. They'll be like, oh, that was amazing. It was so inspiring. What did he say? A week later, it'll be gone. Okay, so that's the deal. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're talking about technical things, make them fun, make them entertaining, make them exciting. James Lorraine, if you find him on LinkedIn, he's amazing at this, guys. I'm going to have him on the podcast too. We just got to get the time together and get it done. But that's it. That's all. You've got people who still can't get how ideas work when they're sitting in front of the internet. I just want to slap them. Do you know how much creativity is pouring at you through that screen every day and you're just taking it all for granted? Do you know how many years of experience and practice it takes to produce some of the stuff that you're consuming like it's popcorn, which takes time and energy to produce also? How about a little gratitude for the people who are making your life a little easier, even if you think your life is sad because all you ever do is Netflix and chill? Well, hey, you have Netflix. Anyway, that's another topic for another time. So basically, you just have to do something. You have to come up with an idea. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it pertains to you and something that you enjoy, talk about it. There's probably an audience out there. All right, I'm going to move on from that point. I'm going to tell you exactly how I make these coming up next. I log into Anchor FM and I push record, and the first time if I'm doing more than one episode in a day, I usually test my microphone with a very short clip first to make sure it's actually recording, see if the sound is okay, make sure everything's good. And then, I delete that and I go on and I hit record now and I start talking. And so at first I was going through like an entire episode and then I was cutting it up. So I was spending a lot of time inside the Anchor tool, actually chopping up those bits and pieces. But here's what I found out. If I actually create intentional breaks, and these are best when I'm doing the solo episodes, because otherwise I'd have to send a new link to start a new conversation. It would be very complicated to do it in an interview, which is why the interviews typically have fewer breaks in them. And I'll explain how I do that in the next segment. So I record these segments and they're anywhere from, 5 or 10 seconds for the opening, kind of what I call a cold opener. That's a thing that they do on TV when you see the murder happen. And then it goes to, the theme song and the whatever the opening slide credit things are for your favorite mystery show, right? That before that is the cold open. It introduces what they're going to be talking about. It kind of hooks you in. It makes you want to wait through the commercial break and watch the show. And they do that intentionally. They don't put all of the, introductory stuff up before it anymore, at least not on broadcast, and on a lot of shorter shows they don't, because that way you might stay and watch a show that you wouldn't ordinarily watch. Okay, so it catches people's attention. So I do that so people can check out if they don't want to listen to the podcast. That's fine. If you listen to that cold open and you're not intrigued by it, close it down. Okay. Then I put my intro in, which is already pre-recorded. I did this one in Audacity. I just found some free music on mixkit.co. It's all free. You can use it commercially. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay. I highly recommend you check out this site because music can cost you a fortune, and there's a ton of it there. They also have video clips. They also have stock images. It's just a really great collection of stuff. And most of it is licensed for commercial use already for free without attribution, which means you don't have to tell anybody where you got it. okay? Which makes it simple because figuring out how to include attribution without messing up your work can be really tough, okay? It's not like you have movie credits. You could, but I guess, you could put credits on a podcast. Sure, they do that. So that's where that came from, and I usually slide that in next. I try to have some kind of a logical order to how I actually put the segments together. A lot of times, these are coming directly out of my blog posts, and I use them as a script. I don't read the whole thing, but I'm scanning it as I'm talking to you and kind of producing the content right then and there, okay? You can actually write an entire script, every and pause and joke. You can put it all in, okay? You don't have to improvise it the way that I do. It took a lot of years to learn to do this. And it's just part of my natural personality and the fact that I'm Irish, which, the Blarney Stone and all that, we are talkers from way back. So if that's not you, that's cool. You can actually put down every single word you want to say and learn to read it naturally. It's going to take some practice. It's harder to sound natural when you're reading than it is to just speak, but you can do it. Okay. I want to encourage you. It doesn't matter. Make your podcast 2 minutes and overthink, the thing you're going to say. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes like mine. It doesn't have to be an hour like some others, right? Keep it to what you can do well. That's my advice right there. So I do each segment, and then when I'm done, I do what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to push this black button that says stop recording, and you're not going to hear me for a second. So after each segment, then that gets added into the library on Anchor, and I can do what I want with it. It gives me the ability to add background music to it. It gives me the ability to edit it if I want to take out my ums and silences and stuff, which I'll warn you about that here in just a second, about how the Anchor app works. Okay, so if I had like a 3-minute segment, I might decide I wanted music underneath that segment. So there's a button there that I can click. I can choose from the what they call smart background music. If you're not going to use the smart background music in Anchor, you're going to need to teach yourself a good audio program, because you have to be able to duck that music down. It needs to start out a little bit louder, and then as you start talking, it needs to go underneath you, and it needs to have the right levels. So you can't just stick something in there. On the Anchor app on your phone, on the mobile app, there is a tool that allows you to upload things to use as background music, but unfortunately, the problem is those tracks that you upload there, they don't go into the smart background music filter, so they are just at the level that they're at. You can set the level, so you could drop it down, but the problem is it doesn't have the same impact in production as the smart background music does. It's not that complicated to learn to add a duck effect using something like Audacity, Audacity. Go to NCH software, look for the Audacity. I think it's audacity.org. It's the Audacity page, because there's another package that NCH sells that's audio. It's not very good, and it's harder to use. But any of NCH's products are great. They have a good video editor too. But you'll want to be able to do that, because otherwise it's confusing. So here's what I do. I order all of my clips in the order that I read them generally. Okay, so if it's an interview, I just keep them in that same order. I don't cut out very much. I only cut out anything that doesn't make sense or anything that just was kind of wasted air. All right. Ordinarily, when you're engineering this kind of thing, if you use a tool like Audacity, it has a tool that goes through and it does what's called Truncate Silences. So you can assign, if a silence is more than a half a second, it can shrink it down to like 0.2 or something like that. So you still have some pauses in there, but they're not like pregnant pauses, because you can have a lot of dead air in the middle of a podcast. Here's the problem with Anchor, okay? And this is a big issue, and they need to fix it. When you edit a sound clip in the Anchor app, either on the desktop or in the phone, okay, and then you bring it back up. So like you have a 10-minute segment and you cut it into multiple segments, and then you bring that back up. You can no longer add background music into those clips. Or in some cases, and I'm not exactly sure when it happens, I need to experiment a little bit longer, but that's a problem. Because if you've eliminated silences in between, then what it does is it messes it all up, and now they can't. I don't know if it's the time code. I don't know what's the deal with their app. But Anchor, if you're listening, that needs to be fixed. We need to be able to go ahead and use those clips just like we would before. Because now what I'm having to do is actually go through, download them onto my desktop, and then re-upload them to Anchor, which assigns them differently, and then they'll work with the smart background music. Okay, so let me say that again. If you had a 10-minute segment, you're cutting it up into 6 or 8 different segments, and you're eliminating some pauses and things in the middle of it, Anchor's not going to let you put background music on those individual clips when they come back up in the library. You're going to have to take that, download that audio to your computer, re-upload it to Anchor. It'll build a new clip in a different format and numbering differently, okay? And then you can add background music to it. I know it's a trick, it's a workaround, but it's there and you can do it. And it took me a while to figure out how to do it. I thought I was gonna have to convert all those files into another format, go through Audacity and all. No, all I have to do is download them and re-upload them. So that takes some extra time. But listen, I made that last episode, if I haven't already said this, because I got interrupted by a power surge here. We're having a snowstorm and the lights went off for a few seconds, so my Wi-Fi went down. If I haven't already said this, I made that last episode 1 of this 2-part series here, in 40 minutes. I recorded it. I broke it into, I recorded it in segments. I assigned the background music to it. I slapped my intro in there. I recorded my cold open. I recorded the ending piece, and I pushed save episode and then published it in less than 40 minutes. Okay? That's pretty quick. It's pretty easy. I'm not that smart. I'm not that good. I'm not that talented. If it took you 3 hours, that would still be really, really, really good, because I'm telling you, those half-hour episodes of Dadcast Radio, if you listen to them that I did in Audacity, that's a half-a-day project minimum. 4, 5, 6 hours worth of cutting stuff up and putting it together. And it was sequence. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I should have had notes for my interviews. I should have put things in the right order so I could just find them. I should have left gaps in the audio so I would know where to cut it. There are lots of things I could have done that would have made this simpler. Listen, if you're using an outside program or even on Anchor, if you want to know where a gap belongs, stop talking for a minute. In fact, I'm going to do this on my interviews from now on. If you come on with me, I may take a breath and then I say, okay, we're going to pause for a second. So I'll mark this as a clip. And then we're just going to be quiet for like 2 seconds. And that's going to be in the audio, and I can cut that out. I can fix that. That's easy to find, because when you're looking at an audio clip in an audio editor, it gives you this wave file. It's a visual image of the actual wave of the sound, right? Well, there's all these peaks and valleys in it, but if you have a flat line, you know there's silence there. Either it didn't record, or there was no noise going into the microphone, or very, very low noise going into the microphone. Okay, so you can find that spot, and that's a good spot to cut. All right, and if you leave those spots in there, then you could kind of fast forward to them, make sure that's where you really meant to go by listening to the part before it, cut it, and then go on. All right. The other thing that I'm not doing on this show is I'm not using bumpers between segments. You can do this. There's 2 basic ways that you can do it. You can put background music underneath your segments, or you can put bumpers in between them. I would not recommend putting background music, then a music bumper, and then background music again, because that's going to get really busy sounding. Here's what I'm doing right now, and a couple of you have mentioned that you really like the format. Every other clip gets background music. I'm not doing anything intentional about which ones. I'm not even really doing that much to pick which music I'm using. I'm using totally their library because the smart option doesn't work with the stuff that I uploaded. I want to use that other music from Mixkit. There's tons of it over there. I could find exactly what I want. I could do some really cool things, and I'm going to in the future. But right now, I want to use the Anchor app as long as possible to keep this going. So that's my recommendation to you: is do some with, do some without. You might do a shorter non-background music clip and then like a longer piece that has it or whatever, but mix it up a little bit. Make it audibly interesting, okay? It's kind of like changing camera angles in a movie, right? About 3 seconds is as long as any shot in a modern film or television show is going to be, unless the director is very intentional about wanting to make you uncomfortable or get you intensely focused on something. That camera's going to change really quickly. That's my recommendation there. Okay, I'm going to come back in a minute and explain a couple of other things. So when I'm done saying everything I want to say for an episode, which I think this is probably the last clip for this episode, then what I do is I take all of those, and they, on the app, you have them in your library panel. And if you use Anchor, you'll see it. It's on one side of your screen there. And they have a little plus mark on them, which allows you to add them into the save episode. And it's going to give you a big, long dialog box that has them all in there. Those files will just stack up in there, okay? The order that you put them in there is the order in which you're going to see them in your screen. You can reorder them. You can grab them and drag them up, but it takes a lot of time and it's kind of messy. But if you'll pay attention to which order you want your clips to be in, and you'll also have your intro and your cold open and any kind of closing statement you want or whatever, because usually if you're doing an interview, you want to introduce the interview to your audience, and then you want to go at the end of it and kind of give whatever details you need about your podcast and thanking the person. And that, is usually a separate piece. You can put that on the end as an end cap. All right, record those separately, and you can slip those into the episode feed and in the correct order. Then you don't have to do anything else. You just, once it's in the episode, then you assign the music, and you can preview it. It's a good idea if you want to do that. I would highly recommend that if you are not as comfortable with yourself as I am and putting mistakes out in the world, because if I screw something up, I'll just fix it later. You want to do that. You want to take the time to actually listen to your episode first. Make sure your audio was working, especially if this is a new setup. If you haven't done this before, whatever that is, make sure that you're listening through that to catch any mistakes. Because I know, like in that episode 0, I've been reading the transcript of it. It's a total shit show. I think I got recordings from I could put clips from 2 different recordings in there because it's really confusing, and I need to go back and do it over. So I may actually re-record that because after I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, people, I don't even understand why anyone listened to any more of this past that point. Because it was kind of a mess. Okay, so when that's done, then you push save episode. Then you're going to add a title, because it's going to take you over into the episode dashboard where you get a chance to actually, add the title onto it. You're going to put in a description. I suggest writing, 3 or 4 sentences, just kind of describing what it was you were trying to share with that episode, telling the name of anyone who's being interviewed there, or maybe a little bit about the topic. Okay. And inviting people to listen. I would put what's called a CTA, or a call to action, on every single episode description, like step right this way, or come on in, or pull up a seat, something like that. Just encourage them to take the action. See if it helps. I don't know. I've been doing it on most of mine. I haven't been real intentional about it, but I need to be. So then you're going to go down and you're going to choose, what series you're in and what episode it is. It's going to label it. It has 2 labels, basically. So the headline, you can put the episode number in that, and then it's also going to give you a chance to number the episode in the overall order of your show. And then tell if it's a regular episode, if it's a full length, if it's a trailer. You can do trailers for every single episode if you want to. I will probably go back and record trailers for each episode at some point, because I think that might encourage some people, because then they can kind of hear a little bit of what it is. And what I'll probably do is just put the cold open, because I can get that clip back out and I can just turn that into a trailer. And then those trailers, though, get this, those trailers will actually create a visual, what is it called? A transcription from the audio, and make a video out of it. You can edit that in case it didn't get your accent or whatever, and it's giving you bad grammar. And then you can turn that into a video, which you can share onto social media. You can put it on LinkedIn. You can put it anywhere. Okay. I am trying to figure out how to promote this on TikTok, because there are a lot of people promoting podcasts on TikTok, and I think this one might do okay. But it's a visual medium, and I don't really have a lot of video clips sitting around of me doing this thing. So I'm going to have to start probably recording it into more than one format in order to get that done, because I really like the simplicity of the Anchor part for doing the podcast. But I recognize that if I can do videos as well, that's going to widen my reach. Okay. All right, guys, listen, that's it for this episode. So I'm going to come back and share a free tool with you here in just a minute, and then we'll be done. Okay, guys, so the free tool that I'm going to talk to you about today is otter.ai. This is a transcription tool that will allow you to upload files from your podcast you're going to have to convert these. Okay, it's a little bit tricky, but if you search on Google, you can find free audio file conversion tools that will turn it into a regular MP3. There's some encoding and stuff that Anchor puts on their files that kind of messes with Otter.ai, but you can do this for free. Then take that file, upload it into Otter.ai, and it will create one of the best transcripts I know of online, which means you'll get a written format of what you did. So if you're doing an interview show, this is great because it's impossible to completely script an interview show. I mean, I suppose you could, but it's not going to sound very natural unless you have really, really skilled actors who can make it sound like they are saying these things for the first time. So Otter.ai, and they have a free version there that you can do. It doesn't have a lot of time a month, but most of you are probably going to be doing like maybe one episode a week or something. If you want to get into it, you really want to do it and make this a big thing for you, it's like $9.99 a month, I think, to get the Otter.ai. I use it in my writing because I record a lot of calls. So I'm going to be investigating. I just looked up some free tools for podcasting. I'm going to be investigating a few more of those and sharing those with you, but I haven't used them yet. So I want to make sure that either A, I've used the tool, or B, I know someone who uses it and I feel really confident in sharing it with you. But I have 4 of them. Otter.ai is the tool that I'm referring to, and you can look that up and get started with it today. All right, guys, that's it. I hope that this helped you. If you have questions about podcasting or how to start a podcast, how to actually record and save your podcast, please, get with me, or just look at the, Anchor.fm has a lot of FAQs and a lot of videos in there, and there's a lot of YouTube stuff and a lot of articles out there sharing information about this. But I'm happy to help. So if you have specific questions, you can send them to markrmorris2@gmail.com. You can go to anchor.fm and find my page there, and you can leave a voice message for me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am Mark R. Morris Jr. Feel free to message me at any time. All right. Hey, thanks, guys, for listening to 8 Second Rule. I really appreciate it. And you've got 8 seconds. What are you going to do with it?